Hey guys, welcome back to Between Sessions. My name is Ebony Harris.
And I'm Elisa Bokeen, and we are two brown chicks changing the face of therapy on both sides of the couch. Yes.
Welcome.
All right. I'm so excited. I'm so hyped.
Well, we're happy to be back, and we're going to make sure we jump right in because I think we have a lot of questions and a lot of conversations. I feel like after we've been doing a lot of different perspectives on the same topic, I feel like, because after we had Dr. Ebony, who got our lives together, now we have Dalina here, and we are so excited to chat with you about nutrition and why we should be able to even want to eat and be healthy at the same time. But go ahead, at least I'm going to allow you to introduce her.
Yes. So today we have Dalina Soto, who is your Latina nutritionist, okay? Yours, mine, ours. She is the Latina nutritionist, and she is going to be talking about wellness from the nutrition perspective. And so, Dalina, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do and what makes it unique from your traditional run-of-the-mill type of approach to nutrition?
Yes. Oh my God. I'm really excited to be here. And I mean, I think that primarily, the difference is that I like to think of things from a positive perspective, right? Like a positive nutrition, not a restrictive nutrition perspective, which unfortunately, when we go to school to be dietitians, it is coming from a very restrictive place, right? We're learning how to quote unquote restrict people in order to help them lose weight. We're learning how to restrict people in order to, help them meet certain goals that textbooks want us to meet, right? But the biggest issue with that is that these textbooks were not written with people of color in perspective, number one. And number two, our foods are never ever talked about. It's usually, if they are talked about, from a bias or like a stereotype perspective. So, for instance, like you'll learn like, Black Americans are, have higher blood pressure or, have more kidney disease or whatever it is because they eat a lot of fried foods, right? Latinos have more diabetes because they eat a lot of tortillas and white rice. Like these are like the little statements, blanket statements that we learn, and it's so fear-based. And so I like to take the science that I know, right? I know what happens to food the minute it touches your tongue to the minute you poop it out. I like to take that knowledge and flip it, right? Let's talk about it from a positive place, but let's also incorporate our foods, because just because they're not in a textbook doesn't mean they don't exist. Just because scientists haven't decided to look at it doesn't mean that they don't provide tons of nutrition. And with my scientific knowledge, like all dietitians could take a look at a plátano or a yuca or whatever and say, oh, like this is a starchy vegetable. This is what it has in it. But they don't, because I quite frankly think it's lazy. But
yeah. No, and I love that because I think the work that you do in your field is part of what Ebony and I are trying to do in the mental health field, where, a lot of the times Black and brown folks shy away from therapy. And the question is like, well, why is that? Well, because the field wasn't created with us in mind, and it pathologizes a lot of our culture. It misdiagnoses us. And so the similarities between the work that you do and that we do is so similar. Again, that's why I'm so excited for you to be here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting part, and I know we're going to get into this later, but as you were even just describing it, Elisa, I think about how we talk about these statistics around Black and brown people, right? And we don't always discuss like how stress impacts us and how living in a Black or brown body creates more stress, right? And so is it really only the foods we're eating, or is it also the way that our body is processing food because of the stress of living in our body? And I think it's the same thing with mental health as well.
100%.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and get into these questions. So the first thing we want to talk about is the way that trauma impacts our relationship with food, right? So we understand that, as you stated, these are cultural foods that we eat, things that have been passed down from generation to generation. But I'm curious how intergenerational trauma impacts that relationship with the foods that we do eat.
Yeah, so I think that, it's so crazy because again, as I started doing this work, the more that we learn, right, about like these traumas that are held on and passed on from generation to generation. But I think a lot of it has to do with assimilation when we come into this country, right? Like trying to assimilate to what dietitians and doctors and nurses and healthcare providers are telling us to do, right? So when we immigrate from another country, I'm speaking from a Latino perspective, right? We come with all these traditions and all of these foods, but then you walk into a doctor's office and they tell you, oh, that's bad for you. And you're kind of left like in limbo, like, well, what do I do? Because this is what my family has been eating their whole life, and now I'm being told that it's not. So it becomes very stressful. And a lot of the people that I work with basically tell me that they're like, screw it, I don't even care, I'm not even going to manage my diabetes, I'm not even going to manage my cholesterol, because why am I going to add another stressor to my day, right? I think we need to think about like social determinants of health and how that adds to the trauma. So I think that it's just like a snowball effect of just being black and brown in a country that does not really look at us as equal. And we don't have the same opportunities when it comes to having food or access to food, right? Having access to healthcare, and all of that compounds, right? So I feel like a lot of the times I hear, oh, well, Latino communities don't eat enough fruits and vegetables, like they're not in our foods. And I often think about like, my family comes from the Dominican Republic. I think about how like our foods, first of all, are not separate. They don't look like my plate. Our foods are combined, all the ingredients are in there. But I also think about like my abuela coming to the United States from having fresh fruit from her backyard in her house, and then coming here and not having access to those fresh fruits, and kind of like maybe even modifying the way that she ate or passed down recipes because she didn't have the ingredients, right, that she would have had in her country. I hear that a lot with the Puerto Rican population because, like, a lot of them, migrated here. Um, and a lot of the food there is imported. There's just so much. It's just so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
But that just adds to the stress, right? And I think that the one thing that I want people to understand is that stress and having high stress, right, or even like that, like continuous stress, is going to affect our blood sugars. It's going to affect our cholesterol. It's going to affect our blood pressure. So food shouldn't be a stressor, right? We should really try to at least take that out of the equation, because there's some micro stresses that we can't really. Well, we're never going to get really stressed, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Which is such a shift in how I think we think about wellness, and we think about um what it takes to quote be healthy. Just the idea that food shouldn't stress you out, and like how many of us have stress around food. I think food and our body, right, like those
Mm-hmm.
I think are the two of the most major triggers and stressors, in particular I think for women,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like I should be a certain body size, and I need to eat this in order to be
Mm-hmm.
that body size. And then I've learned so much. I have to, full disclosure, like I've learned so much because I've worked with Dalina and I follow her and part of her group coaching and all of that good stuff. But just, even understanding some of the origins of these standards of health, that they're
Mm-hmm.
really rooted in anti-blackness.
Mm-hmm.
They're racist, and they're not inclusive. And so you think about all of that and the impact that that has on us, and how we eat, in our relationship with food, and how could we not be stressed, right? Like how could we not be stressed? And it's, I think, to what you're speaking of is how the onus is kind of back on us. Like we're not eating the right foods, or our foods are, the foods that you eat if you're being bad,
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm
A
using that
cheat
in
day.
quotes. Yeah, yeah. And you said one thing, I think the way that you spoke earlier, you said about the way we eat our foods is different as well, right? I
Mm-hmm.
remember
Mm-hmm.
you said one day, we don't eat salads, we eat salsas. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I got my greens, I got my onions. Like, and so I think being able to shift this perspective, and again, not pathologizing our cultures and the way we live, and that what makes our culture is so beautiful, is so important. Which kind of takes me to my next question, because kind of still going deeper into this, it seems as if we want to be healthy, we have to stop eating some of the foods that we most enjoy, or at least substitute them with cauliflower.
That was my arch nemesis.
Just more bland options. So what impact does this have on us as Black and brown folks when we're worried about our health, or we want to be proactive about our health?
Yeah, I mean, all right. I'm going to try to go deep, but not too deep, because then I would be here for like 20 hours.
We understand. We understand.
So I think that, again, Elisa, like what you said is so important for us to understand, right? Like if we think about, again, who's doing the research, who's looking at the nutrition, usually cis white men, right? Like there's barely any women in research in STEM, right? Like there's not that many. And then how many of them are actually of color? So again, we're thinking about from a perspective that like most of the research that's being done, or like the guidelines that are being created, these people have never stepped foot in our countries, have never stepped foot in like a Black community, have no idea how the food is cooked. And then unfortunately, I think one of the hardest things is that like when we have Black and brown folks go into the field, they also get kind of like whitewashed, right? Because they're like, I want to help my community so much, and this is what the science is saying. So like now I also have to perpetuate this. And it also has to do with assimilation. And it also has to do with trying to fit in, because you worked so hard to get a degree that you don't want to go against the grain, right? You want to teach what you learned. And I think it takes a very dope
yes
clinician to be able to kind of like use that critical thinking and be like, wait a minute, like this isn't right, because I grew up with these foods, I grew up eating them, right? So I think that that's like the first thing. I think that for a lot of people of color in these fields, it's really hard for us to come to terms with the fact that like we just spent all of this money learning all of this stuff, and now how do we actually apply it to our people? Because lived experience matters, right? Because our, cultural foods matter. So that's one thing. The other thing is, you're right, like these numbers, like the BMI, or like a lot of like, I think about like blood sugars and cholesterol and all of like that. All of those numbers were created using, again, people that don't look like us. So I often think about like these statistics are quote unquote so high in people of color, but like, what if we actually looked at people of color by themselves? Like, would we have a different equation? Would we have a different range? Would we like, like that's like what I think about, but like the science isn't there, y'all. And I'm not going into research.
right. Yeah.
But if we think about it that way, can you imagine if like we actually took the time to look at it from that perspective, and maybe like we would have our own ranges, and then maybe the diagnoses wouldn't be as much, right? I think the same thing is for, mental health, like you said earlier. There's just so much misdiagnoses happening. So I think that when it comes to food, again, it's just an easy thing to control. It's an easy way to assimilate, especially when if you Google wellness, if you Google dietitian, like what you're going to see is a thin white woman. And what happens is that we've been kind of like brainwashed to think that that's health, right? We think about just like beauty pageants, and we think about like TV. Like I've been watching the show Supernatural. I don't know if anybody watches that. And it starts like in, I think 2007 or something like that. And it blows my mind how thin these women are. Like real thin. And I'm like, oh my, I'm looking at these, and it doesn't matter what ethnicity they are. They all they have to fit that mold to be on TV, right? But think about being a child growing up, or like coming into this country, or watching TV. There's this one very interesting study, of course. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, so I didn't pull it up. But I think it was, I forgot what country it was. It was in South Asia, I believe. Gosh, I can't remember. I'm going to send it to you after we're done talking. But basically, they didn't have TVs. And then probably like in 1998, they brought TV into this island. And within 6 months, about 80% of the girls started exhibiting eating disorders. Because they had never seen British or American TV
Right.
before. They were able to just like live their life, no idea of like what other people looked like. And then they're
Mm-hmm.
watching Baywatch and like Saved by the Bell and like all of these
Mm-hmm.
shows. And like exponentially, the eating disorder behaviors happened. So imagine us growing up with it.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
imagine, like, just like I think about Latino television and how, again, the idea is thin, long hair, straight hair, huge
Right.
butt, big boobs,
Right.
a snatched waist, right? Which I think is also for like the Black community. Like, you can be big in certain areas, but you have to be small in other areas, and it's
Right. Right.
still kind of like meeting that exotic, right, look, that like Eurocentric mold, but with a little bit more like exoticness to it, right? Which again
Right.
is so messed up. So food, we assume, is a way to control the way that our bodies look and a way to fit into a world that truly hates fat bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so food, when you're told that cauliflower, substituting cauliflower for white rice is going to help you, why aren't you going to do it? You don't care how bland
Right.
it is. You're going to go ahead
Right.
and you're going to eat that cauliflower. You're going to say, it's so good. But it's not. But
Yeah.
it's not. And again, it's because our brain is tricking us to think that it's good so that we eat more so that we can replenish those calories, which at least you know all about those starvation studies.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Which
Yes.
again is like mind blowing to me that we have this like data and still like nobody talks about it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so all
Yeah.
of this is interconnected, and so yeah, substituting our foods for quote unquote better foods is going to help us feel like we're doing something good, right? In a world that's
Right.
constantly telling us that we're wrong for looking this way, for being this way, we're too loud, whatever it is. Food just seems like a perfect way to fit in. And whatever gets thrown at us, we're going to try it because it's easy, right? And because the wellness world is always going to have some gimmick of like drink this celery juice or eat these kale chips or have all of this, right? Because from, I don't know if we can talk about supremacy and stuff, but like,
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
Please do.
Absolutely.
but from a place of like white supremacy or whatever, it's about controlling, right? It's about controlling your body, controlling you, and restriction makes you feel in control, makes you feel good, makes you feel
Mm.
like you're doing it right. You have willpower, and when you don't, then you're bad.
Yeah.
They gave you the rules. They gave you the check off, like the check off the marks, follow it. But if you fail, that's up to you because you did that, right? Or I often think about like these wellness gurus that have people starve to death when there's actual people starving in the world.
Right.
What
Right.
Mm-hmm.
can
Mm-hmm.
I curse?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like what a fucking
Yes.
privilege to starve yourself,
Yes. Yes.
to go on water
Yes.
fasts, to
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
do all these
Yeah.
cleanses. Like that's a freaking privilege. And there's
Mm-hmm.
actual people starving in this world, but you are going to be good and reach like, divine dignity. Oh, there's so much.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
good. I
Sorry, I
think
went on a huge rant.
no, you're good
No.
because it makes me think of like when me and Elise always talk about like we um basically want to have people of color on both sides of the couch. It makes me think of this, right? Because of how important it is to have representation and to have people that are actually looking into how this impacts us in a cultural way, right? And I think to your point of a lot of people do go to school and they learn the rules and they just say, okay, this is what I'm going to teach. But when you have people that are actually going in and say, no, this doesn't fit, this doesn't align, this doesn't make sense, and then you do the work to show other people, I think that's extremely important. And it sounds like you've went a lot deeper than a lot of people have to truly understand how this impacts our cultures and to make sure other people are aware of it so that you can know like, okay, I don't have to just follow this status quo, right? Even as a nutritionist, I think it's good for people to see it. And then other nutritionists can say, oh, okay, maybe it never felt good. It never felt like it was right, but I was
Mhm.
just doing what I was supposed to be doing. And
Mhm.
so I
Yeah.
really appreciate you just even having this conversation.
Yeah. I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, the importance of us being able to go to providers. We talk about being able to go to Black and brown providers, being able to go to a Black, brown nutritionist that can tell you, the reason you hate kale is because it's nasty.
It's not native to our
Because you're not able to
food
doctor it
system.
up the way you would some greens. Like,
Right.
Yeah, and because there's no seasonings. Oh my god, I always crack up at the memes that are like, Didn't y'all like colonize our countries for the seasonings? Like, why aren't you using them?
Yeah, you robbed our countries for these spices. Where they at? They're not in the
Where
food.
because the kale is bland. How are we gonna make it taste good? And
That
that's
is
the thing, right?
hilarious.
There's all these like ideas of like if it's healthy, it has to taste bland. If it's healthy, it shouldn't taste good. They take pleasure away from food, and they say you're always talking about pleasure, but all of it is interconnected, right? It's about keeping us in control, keeping us not like from not experiencing pleasure. It's such a ugly bad word in so many ways, and that's why things are labeled as like sinfully good and like delightful,
Yeah.
right? It's all marketing, but
Yeah.
it all comes to that.
Yeah, it keeps us feeling enough shame that we go
Mm-hmm.
buy the next wellness
Mm-hmm.
product or we
Yep.
get in the next, wellness trend to
Yeah.
continue working on ourselves. And all the while we feel terrible about ourselves, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
I know that like right now where the size that my body is in is I've never been in this size, but I also know when I've been in smaller sizes of my body, I still was struggling, right? So it's like you we don't always think about the impact that all of these messages and the things that we see and what we think we should be doing, we're not doing. We still never feel like we're good enough. Like we still never feel like we're healthy enough, or again, because the association between wellness, health, and thin,
Mm-hmm.
that being the standard. So yeah, I'm just so glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I as we talk, from someone, and I've said this before on this podcast, who has been dieting, trying to lose weight since I was like a preteen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously a lot of it is the way we're socialized in the media and all the kind of stuff. And while I've had the desired black body growing up, I still felt like it wasn't good. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good. It didn't feel good for me. And so I think about like the number of diets I've done, the number of ways I've attempted to lose weight and all of that. And to Elisa's point, like how it never is quite enough, right? And it
Never.
always feels like either you're struggling and suffering to lose weight or you're struggling and suffering in the body that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very curious, like when we're talking about dieting and we talk about diet culture and all of this, and I feel like this whole conversation is kind of answering this question, but what is so bad about dieting? Why does it impact us in such a negative way with our physical and our mental health? And is it dieting in particular? Is it the word? Is it restriction? Is it like
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like sometimes we'll say like I'm not dieting, I'm doing a lifestyle change, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
tell me the difference, please, so I can
Yes.
understand.
Yes. Okay. I love this question. Okay. So, yes, I will start off that the other day I did a post that was like the average person does 126 diets in their life. And people were like,
Mm-hmm.
where's your peer reviewed study? And I was like, first of all, it was a poll. I don't need a peer reviewed
Right,
study
right.
because,
Excuse me.
first of all, like you should be asking other people for peer reviewed studies. Like, let's be honest and think about the
Mm-hmm.
math. If you start dieting when you're 15 and you do an average of 3 diets for 40 years, when you're 55, you're going to hit
Mm-hmm.
126. And how many people do 1 or 2 diets a year or 3 diets a year?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
So
I don't
true.
need a damn peer reviewed study to know that this is probably very much true, if not
Right.
even more. Like that number might be a little tame. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
number one. So, if diets were supposed to work, then why do we have to do 126 of them and still hate our bodies? That's number one, right? Number two, the word diet is really supposed to mean a form of eating, a way of eating, right? But of course, it's been taken into more of like a restrictive scenario, right? And so a lot of people will say, yeah, I'm not dieting. I get to eat what I want. It's a lifestyle. But like, is it a lifestyle if you have to count your chips?
Mm.
Yeah,
Like if you
Yeah.
have to sit there
right,
and count 19 almonds to be able to eat them, like is that a freaking
right,
lifestyle? If
right.
you
Mm-hmm.
can't just like wake up and enjoy your day without stressing about like, oh crap, I have to meet these calories, or like, oh crap, I have to exercise this much, or like I have to look at the menu before I go out to eat, or I have to work out this amount of time to be able to enjoy birthday cake with my kid. Like, how is that a lifestyle? How is that like any way of living? And again, I think that if we take a look at history, which if you haven't read the book Fearing the Black Body,
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend it to everybody. It's a really intellectual read. sometimes you have to go back and read the same thing over and over again. She does such an amazing job, Dr. Sabrina Strings, at like breaking down the science and like also breaking down the history. I mean, she starts at like the 13th century. Like, it's mind blowing to me how far she goes back into history. But like voluptuous, big bodies were always, again, the norm. And then there was like a shift when we started thinking about eugenics and how that came into play in the science world. And so it has shifted really in like the closer end to like where we live now, where like this thin, frail woman look is what's been considered to be quote unquote healthy. And there's so much religious and like racial implications to it that's just like mind blowing. So again, we're keeping ourselves hungry and starved and restricted in order to achieve a look that was never meant for us and our bodies, right? Number one. Number two, the more you restrict, the more your body actually wants to hold on to weight, because your body does not give three flying shits whether or not you want to lose weight. It just wants to survive. It just wants to live. It wants to have enough energy to run your brain and your red blood cells and your heart and everything, right? So if you're not giving it enough energy, it's going to hold on to whatever you're eating, right? So a lot of people are like, I barely eat, but I keep gaining weight. And I'm like, well, duh, because you're not eating enough. So your body's actually holding everything, right? Or like the people that are like, I went on XYZ diet and I lost all of this weight, but then I got off of it and I gained more. And I'm like, because this is your body's literal primal response to the fact that it thought it was in a famine.
Right.
And your brain and your body have no rhyme or reason to think that you're going to purposely restrict. So they're going to do everything against their power, or your brain and body is a well-oiled machine. It will do anything to get you to eat enough, which is why we have like, I'm addicted to sugar. It's like, you're not addicted to sugar. You're just not eating enough carbohydrates or enough calories. So your body's making you think about sugar all day so that you actually eat it. Right? It's not that you're addicted to food, or it's not the portion sizes. It's that you're literally not feeding your body enough. And so your body's going to make you want to eat more. Like, your hormone levels are going to go up. Right. And we, again, hear a lot of like gurus and wellness people talking about like reducing this hormone in your body so that your hunger goes down and blah, blah, blah. But nobody's talking about the bigger picture of the fact that like years and years of restriction are going to make those hormones out of whack, because your body's been trying to get you to just eat enough and find your stability, right? And then there's stress. And then there's a lot of us have become sedentary because, of course, jobs or whatever. So like we have to look at health from like a whole bunch of different standpoints: mental health, physical health, how we eat. But it's not just as simple as eat like me, look like, or exercise like me, and you're going to look like me. Like, that's just not going to cut it. And a lifestyle that makes you count chips is also restrictive.
Right.
Right. I think the worst diet experience I had back in my 20s, I tried this cabbage soup diet that a girlfriend of mine had lost all this weight on. And I was like, what is it? She's like, you can have all the cabbage soup you want all day, but it was just like cabbage soup. It was just like chicken broth, chicken, cabbage. And that's it. Like, don't put like seasonings in it. And I cried. By the end of the day, I was like, I bought all of this ingredients, but I can't do this. I can't do this. So okay. So if dieting isn't the answer, and weight isn't an indicator of health, then what should we be focusing on?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, we want to make sure that we're eating enough, that we're getting enough for our brain to work properly, right? So that at least our mental health can also be part of all of this. And we need to have enough energy to move our bodies, right? Like, if you are working out, forcing yourself to work out, and you're like waking up the next day and you can barely lift your arm, that's a sign that your body's super duper stressed, or you stress it too much when you were working out and you didn't eat enough to replenish and rebuild that muscle, right? Like, and I think what we don't realize, right, is that overworking out, right, is a disorder, one. And two, it's causing more stress to your body. The same stress and inflammation that all the gurus are telling you that you're going to get rid of by drinking celery juice, you're actually making it worse by over exercising and not eating enough. Your body's stressed beyond belief, right? So we have to let go of all of these notions that there's like a perfect way to doing it. And I think the way that we do that is by connecting with our body and understanding its hunger, understanding its fullness, understanding what it's telling you at every given moment in time, and also learning to find pleasure in food again. Like learning to find, letting food hit the spot.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
when you do that, when you heal that relationship with food, you'll start realizing that like some days you'll eat more, some days you eat less. Some days you're like, oh my God, all I want is like a huge plate of fruit and vegetables. I don't even want to look at anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just want that. But you're not swinging from end to end of the pendulum. You're just like right in the middle. You're just like living and enjoying your life. You can get up and go on vacation and say, you know what? I'm just going to go eat and not have to worry about counting or looking, right? You can wake up and like enjoy life with your kids and with your family, and you don't have to worry about it. And the beauty of it is that your weight actually stays stable because you're not yo-yoing back and forth
Mm.
between it, right? But also, like when we say stable, it's like you have to understand that if you're a menstruating person,
Right, right, right,
the hormones are going to jack you up a few weeks out of the
Right.
month. And so your
Right.
weight is going to fluctuate. So when we talk about a weight set point, we talk about like a range, right? You don't want to be fluctuating, 30, 40 pounds and then dropping 30, 40 pounds. That's not great for our body either. But when you're like menstruating and you're retaining water and your hormones are a little weird, like you're going to probably see 5, 10, even 15 pounds, that you might hold on to, or like high stress, months. You might notice that that number goes up, but then the stressors go down and you might notice that it goes, back to normal or like where your body usually is. But it's all about like understanding that our bodies are meant to stay stagnant. There's this idea like, oh, I still fit into my jeans from high school. You weren't even done growing in high school. You
right.
were a child. You're a grown ass woman right now. Like, what are you doing? Your hips weren't even wide enough to give birth yet. Like, stop.
Right. Right.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And yes, genetically speaking, some people are small like that, but that's not everybody.
Right, right. Well, and I think the other thing to consider, you know, if you the importance of being able to be connected to our bodies is what I'm hearing a lot from, like being able to be in tune and connected to your body, and how somebody, I think, is important, somebody who is who's had a lot of trauma in their lives, right? The
Mhm.
impact that trauma can have on our bodies and disconnect us from our bodies. And so again, I think this speaks to the taking that holistic approach to health. Is, let's say you're working with somebody like Dalina, and then working with somebody who is also a mental health practitioner. If you do have trauma, to be able to help you work through the trauma, help you release the trauma from your body so that you can be more in tune. Oh my goodness. I could talk to you for hours and
I
hours and hours.
literally, yeah.
Like,
What you
yes.
just said was, I wrote down because I was like, I don't want to forget my thought, but literally, it's what you just said. As you were talking, I was like, this all connects. Not all you're saying, because you're saying a lot, but what I hear is like, be still, right, and pay attention and learn and listen to your body when it comes to like hunger. What do you crave? And I will say that for me, on days when I am not trying to fill my schedule up with all the things, on days when I kind of have time to rest and relax, I can pay attention and say, okay, I feel kind of hungry. Am I really hungry? I drink some water. 10 minutes later, no, I'm not really hungry. I just was bored, right? Or I lately have been craving, like, I have been craving vegetables and salads. Like, I really want a cold, crisp salad or something like that. But that's because I'm paying attention versus just like going, going, going. And
Mhm.
even with the physical health and working out and things like that, I've been hearing that a lot, which I always pay attention to messages that I hear repeatedly. The idea of like, work out, but also you need recovery, right? You don't just keep working
Mhm.
out and working out and working out. And a lot of times people can work on my arms today, my legs today, the next day, my full body the next, and that's okay if your body is fully recovering. But if you're still in
Mhm.
pain and then you're going back in and trying to work out your arms again, you're not really helping. You're causing more stress, as you said. So I think a lot of what you're saying is just kind of like, we have to learn to be still. We have to learn how to connect with our body and truly listen to like what's working and what's not, versus just following the list of things you're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
1,500 calorie diet and work out 45 minutes a day and
Mhm.
burn this many calories while you work, all of that. When you're not paying attention to your body, then your body just gets into survival mode, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like we're thinking about it from like a place of like most trainers, most dietitians, most nutritionists are being taught that. But can we talk about how fat phobic that is? Because we're saying that everybody should be eating 1,500 calories.
Right.
Well, no, actually, that is a really, really low number. Like
Right.
most
That's the diet
children are,
number.
like, that's a diet number.
Yeah.
That's because what we're taught in school is reduce your day by X amount, and then X amount means, and I don't want to say the numbers because I like don't ever want anybody to like listen to this and then try it. But then you're going to lose 1 pound of a week, right? Or if you do this number, you're going to lose 2 pounds a week. But we're not freaking robots. Like that's what I think. We don't plug in and out. So there's no way that your body's going to need the same energy every single day because your hormones, your stress, your activity levels, all of that changes day to day. Yes, we are creatures of habit, but we also move differently every single day. So our needs are going to be different every single day. And when you connect, you're able to see that, right? But again, we're just taught the science and we're not taught to be humans, if that makes sense. Like we're not taught to listen to lived experience. And also like, why can't people just be happy in the body that they are? Like, why do I have to purposely shrink you?
Right.
Yeah. Stress. I mean, we just keep hearing it again, right? Like stress is the major factor here. And I think the biggest takeaway that I'm getting is, again, one, you're looking at standards or you're trying to reach standards that are essentially racist standards, anti-Black standards, and it's not taking into consideration who you are, where you're from, all that makes you and your culture beautiful, and not taking into consideration what it is to be a Black or brown person in this country at this time and the stress level that just to leave the house, that you'll get back to the house. So, whew, so much here, so much.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have you back for a second one because
we'll
I'm telling you, the
conversation.
conversation.
So much.
I feel like every time we have these conversations, I was like, man, that just opened our eyes to so much, right? And then so we know that people that are listening are going to get something from it. We do want to know from your perspective, why is taking an anti-diet approach to wellness dope? Why is that dope?
It's dope because it puts you first, right? It puts you and your health first. Now, full disclaimer, anti-diet is also being taken.
Right. Of course.
Everything. And then, so everything gets taken from us. And like, again, taken to the extreme. But I think that for me, it's more about thinking of positive nutrition. Like that's the term I started using because they can't really take that from me, I feel like, although they probably will find a way to do it. But it's really about putting yourself first, like nourishing your body, nourishing your brain, nourishing your soul, like to live, right? To fully experience life, right? Like food is just so beautiful. There's not one culture in the world that doesn't mourn or celebrate with food. Like food is what makes us human, right? Animals can eat and walk away and have no connection to it, but we as humans have this like experience around food, which again is beautiful, and we should embrace that.
Love that. I love that. I think we always get to this question with our guests, and to me, it's always evident by the end of the session, but we always love to hear y'all's perspective. So, Dalina, what makes you a dope nutritionist?
That I am going to see you as a whole human being, and take your lived experience into consideration in anything that we talk about. And also, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to listen and help you figure out what works best for you and your body.
That's extremely important. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like that's so similar to, again, what we as therapists say. Like we're taking all of this into consideration. We're not going to tell you what to do. We're just going to,
help guide you and give you the
you
information. And I think it really does put perspective to like, what's best for your body. You just have to tap into it. And oftentimes we're so, again, disconnected that we're not able to do that. So thank you so much for this conversation.
So good. I'm about to go get a shirt that says the BMI is trash.
There's tons of shirts. I'm gonna tag you in a bunch of them. Actually, I gotta find it. Like there was this huge what is that group that does like Here Now? I don't know. It's like a huge
Oh yeah,
huge
yeah, I know what you're
thing.
talking about.
The
Yeah, I think
Now
it's called
thing,
Here Now.
Here Now, they did a
Uh-huh.
huge thing about BMI being bullshit. Peloton just released a whole thing about it as well. And
Oh,
shout out to
Yeah, that's
interesting.
good.
Peloton. So again, I think again, and it's all because of Dr. Sabrina's work. Like
Of
Mm,
she
course. Yeah.
because she's talking about it so much. There's so many articles and like things being written now about her work and how she went back and did the
Mm.
research. But again, it's so important for us to understand that like we've been asked to fit a mold that wasn't created for us. I think
That's
right,
that
right.
taking up space, living, joy, like being happy,
right,
that's a
right.
revolution in and out of
Hey, yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
make sure to link that book as
Ooh.
well because this
Yes,
sounds like
yes.
one that everybody needs to kind of take a look at and read. So tell us, how do people contact you? How do they get in your programs? How do they work
Yeah.
with you?
Well, you can find me at Instagram. My handle is your.latina.nutritionist. I get asked, like, do I have to be Latina to join? No, but we do work from like an anti-racist space. We're talking about white supremacy. We're talking about racism. We're talking about, all of the things. So if you're going to be uncomfortable with that, then
Right,
you're not going to be able to come in there.
right, right.
So that's the thing. And yeah, and like, as Elisa says, she's part of my group coaching, which is open all year round. You come in, you hang out with us. We have tons of fun, and then you work through my course, and then you come to the group meetings and you discuss it with us. Get like that individualized coaching while you're there, and then I have a bunch of few like goodies in there that you can download, for like low cost and just get to learn, dip your toes in it to see if like this is what you
Mm,
really want to work on. Because again, it's up to you. Like I tell everyone, like I'm not the dietitian for everyone because there are people that are like, I absolutely need to lose weight. I absolutely need to do that, and like I get it. It makes us feel um, in control. It makes us feel like we're gonna fit in, and I would never want to take that from anybody. This idea that
right.
like they're doing something wrong, but I'm not gonna restrict you. So if that's
Mm,
like your own, like if your sole purpose is to like restrict and see a number on this scale, then I'm not gonna be the dietitian for you because as you've heard,
right, right, right.
this whole episode, we're going to be undoing a lot of what you think is
Mm-hmm.
health and rediscovering what health actually is to you. And that number on the scale, we will never check.
Love it. Love
That
it.
is
Love it. Love it. Love it.
amazing.
So good. I knew this was going to be a good episode, but love it. We appreciate you so much. So definitely check out, I was going to say Latina's work, Dalina's work. Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
We'll definitely have all those links in the description as always. And we appreciate you for watching. We hope you got something from this. Make sure that you leave comments on YouTube or on SoundCloud, wherever you listen to the podcast, as well as subscribe, rate, share, all the things. Follow us across social media at Melanin and Mental Health, Melanin Health on Twitter, and head over to melaninmentalhealth.com to find a dope therapist, our dope merchandise, previous podcasts, as well as to find out more information about what we're up to. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.